The Daily Mail and all white people, racist serial ender, is indicted for ending three more hikers in random attacks, bringing the total body count to six. Frederick Diamond Scott, 22, said, okay, that doesn't make any sense, said in 2014 he wanted to end all white people. Scott has been charged in connection with three endings, two middle-aged men and one homeless woman. All victims were white. On Friday, he was indicted in three other murders of white men. The endings were all over the course of a year, with the latest person shot in the head at noon on August 13th in Kansas City. Scott's mother said he refused to get treatment for paranoid schizophrenia. Well, if he has paranoid schizophrenia, is he really racist? I mean, that's kind of a question that we need to be asking here. Or is he just insane? Now, there was another article I wanted to talk about instead of this one. It's called, well, it won't come up. It was like, yes, diversity is about getting rid of white people. And this is what happens when I go on there. Oh, maybe we do have this article here. I don't know. Because it does bring this up here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. One of the more common memes that I've seen white supremacists spread around recently has been diversity is a code word for white genocide. The concept here is that diversity is only promoted in white nations, and that the end goal is to eliminate white people altogether by flooding all white countries with non-white people until there is no white people left. Well, guess what? White supremacists, that's exactly right. Diversity is about getting rid of white people, and that's a good thing. Oh, wow.
So tolerant.
Yeah, this is pretty hardcore nasty garbage here. Now, before we get started, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Make sure that you're still subscribed. You can find me over on Rumble and on Twitter. Let's get into the rest of this article here. First off, I am a white person myself, so allow me to get that out of the way. I'm extremely glad that the white race is dying. Oh, and you should be too. White people do not have a right to exist, period. Okay, so by that logic, nobody has a right to exist. Why is it that only white people don't have a right to exist? The implication here is that other races do have a right to exist. That may sound like a bold statement, but it's entirely true. Any white person with even the faintest knowledge of history should curse themselves every single day for being white. Oh, any person with even the faintest knowledge of history should be thanking white people for all that they've done to make the world a better place. Throughout all of recorded history, whites have engaged in oppression, genocide, colonialism, imperialism, and just plain evil on a massive scale. White people have denied every other race the right to exist, and have, at some point in history, oppressed every single race on the planet. Oh, white people have never been oppressed by any other races. I mean, the Ottoman Empire. Their favorite thing to do was take white women as slaves. So you tell me. And you could look around the world and see that these other people in other countries were oppressing their own people. You can see that the natives, actually the Native Americans, were the first people to kill a white person in the New World. It wasn't the white people that went in and started killing Native Americans. It was the other way around. I'm not saying that they weren't justified in doing so, but if you want to talk about genocide, this is how things go. Why then should whites now be allowed to live in peace when whites have historically been the world's #1 source of conflict and oppression? Whiteness is racism. No, it's not. Period. Whiteness is the source of all oppression in the world. No, it's not. Before white people even evolved, people were oppressing other people. That's just human nature. But if you're going to break off into monogamous relationships, often there's going to be one person who's oppressing the other person in that sort of situation. It just happens because people have lots of insecurities, lots of fears and doubts and desires. These emotions wreak havoc on interpersonal relationships. They do. So if monogamy at all was developed before whites evolved, which is probably the case, then I don't know what to tell you. There were people being oppressed in those situations. Not only that, even if it was polygamy, if there's polygamy, that's obviously, I mean, the woke are always calling heterosexual relationships oppressive to women. So look at polygamy. If polygamy at all was a thing before whites came along, which it probably was, then the women were being oppressed. Idiots. Whiteness is racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and heteropatriarchal capitalism. Wow. So there are no white Muslims. None. Which is not true. I've met some. And Islam comes out of the Caucasian world, right? The Middle East is predominantly Caucasian. They are not white, but they are Caucasian. So this is a whole idea of getting rid of white people because, obviously he's telling it right here in the article. And there are plenty of homosexual white people. This heteropatriarchal capitalism. What are you talking about? Sexism. You're telling me that white people invented sexism. Uh-huh. Again, we can just look at the Middle East and see how they treat women. You want to say that's not sexist, okay? I'll go along with that. That's not sexist, right? Every person has a role to play in the world, and we can divide those roles along gender lines. They do it really well in the Middle East. You telling me that's not sexism according to the definitions of the woke here? It's sexism. Eliminate whiteness, and you eliminate every single form of oppression that the world currently faces. No white people means no oppression. White people are like a cancer, and oppression is a symptom of the cancer. Cut out the cancer altogether, with the cancer being white people, and you get rid of all the oppression which white people cause. I have dedicated my life to fighting racism, and I have determined, based on all available evidence, that the only way to really eliminate racism is to eliminate whiteness. Okay, I'm going to use this story that I've told before. I used to work with an African man. I've worked with plenty of black men and women throughout my life. This guy was actually from Africa, though, and he told me the story about how he was the prince of the country that he came from, and there was a revolution, a revolt, and they dislocated his arms and shoulders and threw him in a ditch and left him for dead. Well, he survived that and made his way to America, where he sought refuge. And he said, I can't go back there. They'll kill me if I go back there. I'm like, well, why don't you just go back and pretend to be somebody else? He's like, they'll be able to tell by looking at me that I am part of the ruling caste that they recently overthrew. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, my hair's too soft and my nose is too wide. So I'm sorry to tell you that racism exists even in and among people that are the same race. Whiteness is the ocean from which racism flows. Get rid of whiteness and you get rid of racism. Despite what white supremacists often claim, white people do not have a culture. White culture consists of nothing more than oppression, genocide, and disenfranchisement of minorities. Explain that to all of the different European cultures that existed for centuries without knowing that there were people of other races. They didn't have a culture. Their whole idea was, we got to fight off minorities, even though they didn't even know about minorities. Ridiculous. White culture is racism and nothing more. Oh, wow. Okay. Explain that to me. I'm married to a woman who isn't white. I don't know what to tell you. When white supremacists talk about white culture, what they're really talking about is racism. Over the course of history, white people have built a massive empire based entirely on the hard work of oppressed and disenfranchised minority groups. But guess what? White people, that empire is finally coming to an end now, and its demise is music to my heart, to my ears. He didn't spell ears right. How you mess that up? It's a pretty easy word to spell. To quote the great anti-racist activist Tim Wise, do you hear it? The sound of your empire dying, your nation as you knew it, ending permanently, because I do, and the sound of its demise is beautiful. Wow, these people. Descendants of Holocaust survivors can personally attest to the evil that white people are capable of when they hold the reins of power. Thankfully, Hitler was half Jewish, wasn't he? So they're saying, because, obviously the people that they're referring to in the Holocaust were the Jews. So you tell me. Thankfully, whites won't be holding the reins of power for much longer. When white people die out, so will racism, sexism, queerphobia, and all other forms of oppression. The only way to eliminate racism, white privilege, and white supremacy is to eliminate whiteness altogether. I had a coworker who was Middle Eastern, and he was going on about how, being queer is bad, being gay is bad. Is that queerphobia? I'm assuming it is. And I know that historically, black people have been very, very staunchly anti-queer. And there was, who was it? It's Russell Peters. Is that his name? The comedian, the Indian comedian from Canada. I want to say it's Russell Peters. He would tell the joke about how like his dad would be like, "Oh, there's too many queer people in the world. Ah, how dare they?" He's like, "Okay, fine." Finally, at the point, he's like, "Okay, fine. Queer people can be okay as long as no Indians are queer." It's like you're telling me that white people came up with these ideas and sold them to the Indian people. Yeah, okay. This is so stupid. When I teach my students about human rights, critical race theory, and the role of whites in worldwide oppression, my white students often ask me how they can atone for the evils of whiteness and how they can make up for centuries of white oppression. And I tell them, you can do that by not having any children and ensuring that the white race does not live to oppress anyone ever again in the future. Thankfully, white birth rates are indeed very low. While the birth rates of minorities are much, much higher, within our lifetimes, whites will be a minority in a significant number of formerly white countries, including the US, the UK, France, Germany, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. To name just a few, two white supremacists yearning for the days when whites could rape and pillage the world with impunity. This is incredibly frightening. To people on the right side of history, however, this looks like progress. Whites are finally getting their just desserts, and it's about time. I sincerely hope that when the white power structure finally comes crashing down, whites will receive no mercy from the minority groups that whites have spent centuries oppressing. We certainly don't deserve any mercy or kindness, as we have given nothing of the sort to others. Bullshit. We have to. I mean, we ended race-based slavery. We gave blacks the right to vote. We didn't have to do any of that. We could have kept oppressing them, as you say, as you put it. Ridiculous. And that's just one country. The Atlantic slave trade was largely, I think the majority, ended by the UK, by white sailors going out and attacking these slaver ships and freeing the people on board, sending them back to Africa. Things of that nature. So you're telling me that it's all white people doing only evil things, whereas we know that other people all across the world have done evil things. The thing that's different about white people is we figured out how to sail, how to circumnavigate the globe. So we brought our way of life to the rest of the world. We saw these people who were not white as savages because they were doing things which we would consider abhorrent. And you and I, watching this video, and me obviously making this video, would consider those things abhorrent today. I mean, look, human sacrifice for gods that we don't even believe exist. To the Christian mind, that is abhorrent. You don't sacrifice life to a god. What kind of god would that be if you had to do that? We should also know that when they do become a minority in formerly white countries, they will not be receiving affirmative action or any of the other benefits meant to assist the minorities that whites have historically oppressed. Why? Because whites don't deserve those benefits. It's as simple as that. One can look at South Africa, where whites are only about 8.4% of the population, but blacks continue to receive affirmative action because blacks in South Africa have historically been disenfranchised by whites. The same thing will happen when whites become a minority in North America, Europe, and Oceania. Because whites have historically oppressed minorities in all three of those countries, in all three of those continents. Not to mention, why should whites receive any kind of benefits when the ultimate goal is to get rid of whites altogether? Finally, laws against hate speech will serve to prevent whites from complaining about this, as any white person who complains will be arrested, given a long prison sentence, and made an example of for the rest of the remaining white population. Yeah, when you start talking about taking away my freedom of speech, that's when I start reaching for my gun. Speech that attempts to justify the white power structure and perpetuate white oppression of minorities is not freedom of speech, and it has absolutely no place in modern society. Yeah, but you don't realize the hypocrisy here. You're sitting here saying that we need to oppress white people. That shouldn't be freedom of speech then. But of course, this person's obviously racist. Racist against his own people. Man, that's really bad. I mean, it's bad enough being racist against other people, but your own people? You're just saying that you want to get kicked in the face by people who aren't you. That's ridiculous. Why would you want that? As white people, we all need to recognize that we no longer have a place in the world. This world now belongs to the minorities that that us whites have spent centuries oppressing, and there is absolutely nothing that any pathetic white supremacist can do about it. Actually, if you want to start a race war, I'm guessing that the whites are going to win that one. I mean, if you're the one here saying talking about all about history and how whites were so bad in the past, well, you want to see what we do when you start a race war? In order for a better world to be created, white people need to be exterminated, period. It's as simple as that. We should simply be thankful that our death will be accomplished through mass immigration and declining birth rates. When whites have exterminated other races, it wasn't nearly so peaceful. No, that's not true. Whites have never exterminated any other race. I don't know what to tell you. Whites have not done that. You see, but other races are not as evil as whites are. Oh, aren't they? Okay. And it's important to remember that the world belongs to minorities now, and they will make a much better, more peaceful world with what they're given. Okay. Only when white people have ceased to exist will a peaceful and progressive society free of racism and hatred be possible. The only way to eliminate white privilege, white oppression, white racism, and the oppressive white power structure is to eliminate white people altogether. So yes, white supremacist diversity is indeed white genocide. And white genocide is exactly what the world needs more than anything else. Wow, that was freaking horrible. That person, all right here, the top comment, the first comment up here is, kill yourself, cunt. Yeah, keep posting your true intent. You are doing European descended people the biggest favor. Yeah, don't like the beginning of this article here where it says, hey, this has been taken down because it's hateful and abusive content. No, leave that stuff up. Leave that stuff up. We want to know who people really are. We really want to know who they are. Wow, this is the same. I guess these are all different commenters, but they have the same icon. Okay. This must be satire intended to awaken those who are not yet red-pilled. Yeah, maybe it is. Any other short ones? I don't want to read really long ones. My white ass is going to be around for a long time, bitch. Why don't you come try and remedy that? Let's see here. Anything else? Such long. These comments are like books. Oh, here we go. Whatever her real identity is, it's an article written by a lefty skank. Okay. One would hope she winds up in a forced sex slave situation. No, I don't hope that on anyone. That sounds horrifying. I don't want that for anybody. But she's going to probably end up... This is a woman who wrote this? I don't know. I can't see the name because it's covered by this warning that it's hateful. So if it was a woman who wrote this, I mean, there's a good chance that this person will end up in a mixed race relationship, and I'm sure that's probably, if it is a woman, that's probably what she seeks out, is men who are not white so that she can have babies who are not white. Ideally, if she's going to have babies at all. Probably won't. Those can be abusive. Those can be very abusive. You can get abused by people who are not the same race as you. It's very, very common, actually. So, in fact, I think it's probably, I don't know the demographics, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's more common for people to be abused in interracial relationships than in relationships of the same race because of the cultural differences that go along with being in an interracial relationship. You're going to have a lot of cultural differences typically in those relationships, a lot more so than if you were just to marry somebody of the same race as you. There's going to be differences, period. That's how it is. Anyway, that's all I got for this time. That was crazy. I was gonna do a lot more elaborate thing regarding that other article that I brought up, but wow, this maybe I'll do that other article again. But this was the article I had originally intended to do. It is much worse than I thought it was going to be. I didn't even read this because I thought it was unavailable. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.